Okay, so our next guest, walking onto stage as we speak, is a man that's not many people have done this, might I add. He's making a second appearance on the Brave Ideas podcast.
That's right.
He is known to some as the Hobbit. Listen, I'm sorry, it's a script. I don't know where it came from.
I don't know where that came from either.
Also a creative director here in user experience, which means he makes pretty buttons that people can click on.
That people want to click on.
And his name is Celso Borges. He says his surname rhymes with gorgeous.
That's right, it does.
Which
it does.
So it is what it is.
So Celso, before we ask this competition, before we continue this conversation, I have one really simple question for you.
Yeah.
Why are you so scruffy today, dude? Couldn't you have made an effort? Seriously?
It's not my fault that the weight of manhood is too heavy to carry. Daniel.
Oh, snap. What a comeback.
There'll be a tweet about that, I'm sure.
Okay, so besides your rivalry, Celso, what's new?
So what's new is I wanted to chat to you guys briefly, because this is a topic that could probably get quite lengthy. Briefly chat to you guys about design thinking and how it can change lives, right?
Sure.
And yeah, it seems like, quite big, but in actual fact, it's really just understanding what it means, understanding how, what the approach is, how to apply it, and then kind of, embellish in the outcomes, which is, at least at Aqua, we've started to see quite a positive outcome.
So cool. I think what we need to do though is to establish what is design thinking.
Yeah.
Because I'm a strategist and I don't know the first thing about design. I make PowerPoints.
Yeah. No, I know. So then let me enlighten you. So design thinking, what it isn't is it's not thinking like a designer, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a misconception. And so all the designers in the room can start puffing out their chests as they walk around through the agency. It's more about an approach or methodology where designers have used this methodology to solve complex problems, to create attractive, usable solutions for their customers or users. So it's basically making sure that whatever process we have, in the ideation process, that the user, is at the center, that we're always checking and validating, is this for the user?
So to unpack a little bit further, how do we implement design thinking in this agency specifically?
Yeah, well, in this agency specifically, we need to just understand that it becomes a process, right? And how do we implement that process? How do we make sure that we're adhering to that process in the agency? It's understanding that also this process is not just exclusively to a user experience department. It's not exclusive to the creatives. That it's actually a culture that needs to kind of start from when we receive the brief, from a client service point of view, to all the way to the guy that's developing or producing the physical product or service that the end user is going to be, swiping or prodding or typing or tweeting or clicking on that button, that very important button.
So Celso, while I totally get that design thinking is about placing the user experience, the user at the center of the experience, what I'm still a bit hazy on is the process of it. How would I, as a layman or as a lame man, as a layman, go about with having a design thinking mindset. I don't want to say thinking like a designer, because that's not what it is. But how would I go about having a design thinking mindset? What would I do? What's my steps?
There's been quite a few articles written about how to approach it, how to implement it in agencies, and after a bit of research, I've kind of summed it up into 5 simple steps that we can use that ensures that we are applying a design thinking process, right? And the first step is to learn from people, right? That's who we're designing for. So we need to spend time with those people. We need to interview them. We need to ask them questions. We need to understand what they love. We need to understand what they hate. What do they need? Because if we're not validating with them, then who are we designing for? That means that the design is really just a pretty shell that's empty.
Sure.
The second step would be to identify patterns or find patterns. So now that we know the behavior, can we find commonalities between those? Because once we find those commonalities, we'll be able to then identify different opportunities, right?
Yeah.
The third step would then be to establish design principles. And these principles are really going to be guiding you as a compass to achieve the end result, right? You're always checking back and validating that you're answering to those questions, to those principles. The third thing would be to actually make something, prototype it, create it, build something. Because as soon as it becomes more tangible, you start seeing how people interact with it. You start noticing the behavior of people around it. Exactly. Then that's the different kind of insight that you would get by just asking someone. Sure. Right? Yeah. And now you take all those insights, and that can actually then bridge the gap between the design principles and the actual solution, is once you start playing around with it. And then lastly, it's to iterate relentlessly. So, you learn, you make changes, you build it again, you build it better, and you just keep going at it until you arrive at the best solution or product that you can possibly get.
No, and I think, now it makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can do it now.
You're very welcome. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm
here. It totally works. Yeah. And I'd be quite interested for you to take us through an example of how you would approach a project with a design thinking mindset. And think of a project that is specifically in an African or South African context. How would you approach a website in Africa with a design thinking perspective?
Yeah, so let's just say said brief is to create a website, and it needs to be for a South African market, So if we go through the different steps, so learn from the people. Does everyone have access to websites, computers? Can they access it? Are they mostly on feature phones? Sure. So can they view it? So that would have already started, pointing us in the right direction in terms of, okay, well, if we are going to be creating a website with a certain function, can everyone access it? Are there specific behaviors that we need to understand to better improve the content, to lay it out? Responsive is a given, but a lot of people are very familiar with USSD and shortcut SMS and all of those kind of things. So if we learn from the people, understand their behavior, we would be able to then produce the right website for the right person, or maybe in this case, no website, because they wouldn't be on there.
Awesome. So I'm going to hand over to Esther, because there appears to be a question from the interwebs.
Thank you for alerting me. So Rob Squire has sent us a message on Twitter asking, what is the difference between design thinking and structured innovation?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because from what Karen was saying is that, we tried a more flexible, open way of being innovative, and being creative in that space. And then he spoke about how we're trying the more structured way. And I think this way of ideation really fits quite nicely with design thinking, because that's essentially what it is. It's being innovative with the user in mind. It's really drawing from that innovation toolkit to produce a solution or a product that fits perfectly into the user's life, that feels natural, but that they've never seen or used before, that creates an opportunity for them to do things that they've never done before. Sure. And so I think it very much ties in together, that design thinking and innovation and structured innovation goes hand in hand. So that's why I think at Aqua, it kind of shows that we are thinking in the same direction, even though we'd different departments, we are moving in the same direction. We're working in unison, and then that means that we're just going to achieve so much more. So it's really exciting.
Awesome. So Celso, it's been a great conversation, and I haven't been as distracted by your manly beard as I thought I was.
As usual.
Yeah. So I just want to ask you, if there was one thing you could take out of this conversation for Aqua as well as the broader Wunderman network, what would that be?
Well, I think it's just to understand that when it comes to methodologies, approaches to something, right? It needs the buy-in from the entire agency in this case, right? It's a culture, it's a paradigm shift. So it just means that everyone needs to be on board. It's not exclusively for creatives or for strategists, Daniel. It means that we have to involve everyone, which means that we need to start from right at the beginning of the process and make sure that it carries through all the way to the end, past the strategists, past the ORM analysts, past everything, and just to make sure that everyone is inclusive of this, because anyone can be creative. And I think that's the message.
I love that. So if a lot of people want to get involved, not with you, but to get or your beard, but to ask you any questions they have. If people who are listening, watching via Periscope would like to know, a little bit more about how they can implement it, where can they get that advice from? How can they contact you?
Oh, it's so easy, Esther.
Oh.
They could actually, they could just.
Too easy, baby.
they could just email me on celsob@aquaonline.com. That's CELSO, in case you forgot.
Okay.
And and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for having me.